London. And good morning, good day, wherever you happen to be in the world, and welcome to Cozy Talk Shows. And my name is Carol Ann, and as the writing facilitator, what I do is I support soul-driven entrepreneurs to become more productive with their writing by connecting them with their deeper innate ability to write. But more importantly, they experience free-flowing writing. They experience an unlocking of the writer within and getting their book written, getting their story written, because you cannot publish what isn't written. And all of this has come about through my own journey of unlocking the writer within. So good afternoon and welcome to the show, Amanda. So if you'd just like to introduce yourself, please.
Well, it's good morning from Calgary. It's 6 a.m. here. So I am a teacher, an author, and an illustrator, and founder of Art, Mindfulness, and Creativity. And I help people find their own unique creative capacities within themselves through art or through mindfulness, through yoga, and really helping people find their deep inner passions within themselves. So, yeah, welcome today, and I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yes, our topic today is how writing a book is a healing journey. And I know you've already written some books, Amanda, and I'm on that journey of writing some books. And as I said, unlocking that writer within, because for me, writing was always a nightmare. I hated words. I hated writing. It never flowed. I could never find the words I wanted to use, to say what it was I sort of felt I wanted to say. And it was always sort of very slow thinking. Whereas being I was a maths teacher, a mathematician, numbers just like this, they popped in, they did what I wanted them to, and even still do. But yeah, this journey has been one of finding a joy with playing with words, unlocking that writer within, and probably share a bit more of that later. But what's your experience, and what's your sort of, do you take with this title, and how was writing your books a journey of healing for you?
Well, my first book actually I wrote in because I write children's books. I wrote in like 5 minutes because it was after a meditation at a retreat. And so I had just gone through like my divorce or start the beginning process of the divorce, and I wrote this book called It's Okay to Feel to help kids understand that, and parents be able to talk with their kids about how there's so many different ways that you can be feeling, and they're all okay. It just depends on how you choose to deal with it, whether it makes that okay or not. Like, you can be angry but you can't punch your brother.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be angry, but we need to find ways to channel that anger so that we can in the end heal from that anger. And so that was my very first book, and each book that I've written has been a healing journey on its own, because my original book, I didn't plan for it to be out in the world. I planned for it to be one copy in my classroom. I illustrated the pictures for it, and I just wanted it as a book that I could use in my classroom. And then the universe had a different path for me, and I met people who had self-published on Amazon, and um, that led me down a path to self-publishing and to being an indie author. And so I've now written and illustrated 8 children's books. 2 of them are co-authored, and I'm in the process of writing my third one, or sorry, my ninth one. And so it's written. I just need to finish doing the illustrations for it, and even the illustrating has been a healing journey as well, because I draw and paint as my passion, and it's what gets me the most centered. But then also the the art is the most time consuming piece for me. And so while the children's books are don't take long to write, it's the illustrating that takes a really long time for me, and it really gets me to have to focus and to get back on track whenever I feel like I'm off track. It's because I haven't been drawing or painting for a while, and I have to get myself back on track with that. But I also started writing for a magazine, and that's been a healing journey as well, because I get to pick the topics, and all of my topics have been on healing, like forgiveness, or how to talk, um how to like unplug from technology with your kids and the importance of it. And so everything that empowering your life after divorce, everything that I've written has been on healing, and on my about my healing journey too, and about what I see with kids in the classroom, and needs that need to be met. And so I think that through writing, it's a amazing form of self-expression. And I laugh when you say, Caroline, that you were a maths teacher, so writing was really hard for you. And I look back, and for me, being good in like English language arts, or English, was really dependent on my teacher. And so I went from like grade 11 English. I don't know what the grades are in London, but it's like your second from when you go to university. And in grade 11, I had like a 90% average, and then I went into grade 12, and I had like a 60% average, because I just couldn't stand my teacher. And yet now I come out of, and so I went into like university with a really poor mark in my grade 12, because I had a horrible teacher who I couldn't stand, and I just didn't want to be in his class. And um, I look back on that, and it wasn't because I was a poor writer. It was because I had a poor teacher that I just didn't want to be around. And so I look at that as like, you can be inspired by others as well, and your writing journey really can be sparked by having someone inspiring come into your life and choose to help you. Like if you looked at my marks from grade 12, you'd be like, why is that girl writing? But I've written articles in university that my professors, even when I was doing my master's, asked if we could get published. And at the time I had a toddler and was going through a divorce, and I was like, I don't have the time to do this. Like I just barely got this article in, this paper in for the class. I don't have extra time to do this other work. But um but I know that I'm a good writer because I've had university professors ask to get my articles published. And so it's really interesting how that journey can come about, especially if you've had a teacher in school tell you that you aren't a good writer, or just like squash that motivation that you have to write and to self-express.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious what your journey is into becoming a writer, since you were so focused on the maths.
Yeah, I'll sort of bring that in, because you know what you were saying about a teacher that actually pulled you down and didn't inspire you as much. And she said was a poor teacher, and what I've sort of come to realize is that actually these teachers are there to teach us something. There's another lesson other than the actual English that they're teaching you. And unfortunately, we as learners aren't taught how to be learners and learn the lesson that is actually there to learn. Because I remember the same with a particular maths teacher. I mean, I was lucky. I had my dad, who was an engineer. He loved maths. He explained a lot for me, and he used to teach me things that I hadn't even sort of learned at school, and I was able to pick them up easier when, you know, when we sort of moved on to them at school. But I remember uh, years 10 and 11, which I think is equivalent to your grades 10 and 11, sort of age 15, 16. Yeah, is that the same, yeah. And I had one teacher who was really great at explaining maths, and we always used to gravitate to him if we had questions, because we learned not to go to this other teacher because somehow he made it so complicated. And I used to sit in his lessons and just sit there and go, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he'd say, well, I'm all right. He said, I've got all day, be waiting for us to answer. And I can remember thinking, well, if we're not answering, that's not helping us by what you're saying. And I think that what made me realize is that a lot of people, say, well, you've got to be a good mathematician to be a good to be able to teach it. Well, this guy was an amazing mathematician. It didn't make him a great teacher. To be a great teacher, you need to be able to get into the other person's world and to see what they're struggling with. And that was the joy for me when I was teaching, was actually supporting my students, finding out where they were struggling and be able to sort of get them past that struggle. But I think if I knew then as a pupil what I know now how to learn, it would have been a completely different ball game for me. But I've learnt things along the way with that. But I actually, in terms of unlocking the writer within me, it just sort of happened because I stepped out of teaching. I trained in something called educational kinesiology, which is about drawing out learning through movement, and brain gym is a key part of that, and that's activities that help take away the stress of learning. And so I trained in that and trained in some other complementary fields, but of course working on myself at the same time. And I just found myself working with others with their writing. It just happened. I don't know why. The universe just sends you people to work with, and they've got a goal, and it was around writing. And then at one point, I don't know, something, I just thought, maybe I could do an English language A level, which is our advanced level that we do from age 16 to 18, which I always thought I was not capable of doing. Because when I went to teach training college, in the first couple of years, I had extra lessons to help me with my English for writing the essays. And but anyway, so this was probably about 15, 16 years ago. I remember thinking, I think I fancy having a go at doing an English language A level. And I did. I had a go at it, and it wasn't easy, but I was able to use the tools that I trained in to support me. And I was still asking the same questions every week. What does that word mean? Like all the sort of the grammar words, like adjective, pronoun, and because words just like sat on a page. They didn't do anything. They didn't have a picture around them or didn't move. Because for me, numbers, it's like they move. I see a number and I see other numbers around it that help make that number. They just sort of, they all interplay. And words just didn't. And so I would still keep asking those questions each week. But because of the training, I'd also trained in NLP by that stage. And I was able to ask questions to elicit the answers so that I really got the understanding that I wanted, and I didn't give in. And that was the difference for me, because when I used to be at school, I didn't ask. I didn't know how to ask. I didn't really know what I wanted to ask for, because the teachers always put in my reports, she needs to ask for help more. I was thinking, well, I don't know. And I remember the grammar lessons, that one particular, one year in the secondary school, we had grammar lessons, and they just went over my head. I remember hating them, but something went in. I know something went in. But anyway, I did this English language A level, and after the first year, you do what's called the AS level, and then the second year, you do the full A level, and I passed it. I was like, oh, wow! I was just so amazed, and I found there was an enjoyment in it, even though it was tough and I found it hard work. But I also, in that second year, I did a study between Enid Blyton and J.K. Rowling, because I wanted to see what it was that had people put down Enid Blyton but sort of praise J.K. Rowling, because I loved Enid Blyton as a child because she really grabbed my imagination. I would be in a book and I'd be lost for the day in that book, you know. And so I did a study, and I did the first book of the Famous Five and the first Harry Potter book and compared them. And the reading age was about the same, but J.K. Rowling would use more adjectives, and there was a greater spread of words and some longer words that she would use. And then I think it was either the fourth or the fifth book in the Harry Potter series I struggled to get into. And I remember talking to someone else who struggled the same way. And I thought, let me have a look at that. And I did the same sort of study on that and realised that the reading age had jumped by 2 years. I was like, wow, because the sentences were longer and I would struggle to hold the thought in my head as I was reading the whole sentence. So I did some work on myself so that I could raise my own reading age, because clearly my reading age hadn't moved. I'd grown up, but my reading age hadn't changed. And then I got into the book and I read it. I was able to read those long sentences and I found something shifted. So for me, this has been a huge healing journey, because I've realized my struggles to do with English and learning to write. And that's what I've worked on. And so this is what I've brought into my programs now and help other people. But that was quite a revelation for me, that realization that my reading age, you know, I needed to shift that, and that realization that probably a lot of other people, their reading age hasn't shifted, you know, but it is possible to shift it. And so, yeah, that's been part of the healing. And now I quite enjoy exploring words. Words do sort of come alive. And if they don't, I'm quite happy to say so and go into the dictionary or go to Google and find out and write them down and write other words, and until they really come alive for me, you know. So yeah, that's been the sort of the journey, the unlocking, that blossoming. So in terms of, I heard, you know, your books were very healing for you in terms of the topics. I mean, that's amazing. And also for the focus that I love for your pupils. But your art, bringing that in, you know, and I love that. You sort of illustrate your own, but there's there's healing that has happened there around your art. Is there anything else that you've found in terms of writing or writing a book that's been a healing journey for you?
Yeah, I was thinking about this as you were talking about what, like, where did I kind of start, and if people are starting to think about writing, or starting to think about how they can use writing as a healing journey. One of the things that, like, as a child, I journaled and stuff, and I was probably the only person in my family who did journal. But as an adult, when I found myself in this really dark place, one of the things that I learned about was about writing gratitude and writing down things that you're grateful for every single day. And so I started that. I started writing down 10 things I was grateful for every single day. And every single day before I went to bed, I would write 10 things I was grateful for. And that was like the beginning, basically, of my healing journey in writing. And it was writing down what I was grateful for. And then now, some of the things that I write down, I don't write in my gratitude journal every single night like I used to when I was in my darkest space. In my darkest space, I definitely needed that every single day to like switch my brain into the positive before I went to bed. And that was really healing for me. Sometimes just writing all of your thoughts and emotions down, or if you're struggling with a breakup or with something that's going on in your life, you can write. One of the teachings that I've learned about through my own spirituality is to write a letter to that person or to the situation, and then don't actually even send it. You just like write it, get it all out on paper, and then you have like, and then you burn it and you put it in the fire and you just burn it. It's not meant for anybody, it's just meant for you to heal and to get all of those words out of you, and then to burn the letter afterwards. And it can be so releasing for anything that you're stuck on. It's not necessarily that the person has to get the letter and that they have to change. It's that you have to get those emotions out of you. And I found writing letters has been so healing for me. And it's not that they have to actually be sent. It's that just to get that that thing on paper that you're struggling with can be so empowering. And I know that for me, writing writing about my emotions and writing about things that I'm struggling with, and then how I can, when I was learning, and as I continue to learn, is how I can switch it into the positive, into, okay, this is what I'm really struggling with. What can I learn from this situation? It's like what you said about the teachers that weren't necessarily good teachers. There's still something you can learn from that situation. And that they're not meant to teach you the content, they're meant to teach you some other life lesson. And that's so true, is because you can learn something from every single situation. And it's your mind that determines if it's a positive or a negative. And so I don't want you to go into toxic positivity, but definitely question, what is it I can learn from this situation? Because any situation has a learning opportunity. And that's how you can turn it into a positive, is because you, it's not like, oh, just think positive and it's going to go away. It's like, okay, I'm in this really tough situation. I could journal about it, I could write about it, I could paint about it, but then how can I learn from this situation? What is this situation trying to teach me? And that gets you thinking in a positive direction, but not in that toxic positivity where you're actually doing more damage to the situation and to your healing journey.
That's right, because it actually it takes away that victim mode, doesn't it? You're doing this to me, and therefore there's nothing I can do about it. Because if you look at it and say, okay, so what can I learn from this? It's like there is that opportunity, and you take back control. And as you say, just recognizing that life lesson is really empowering. And it's something that I work a lot with when I work with people, as well as doing it myself. And there was one person that I worked with the other year. She's a couple of years ago now. I forget. Last year's like a blur, so it's the year before that. And so I spent a year. We would meet up, and she was wanting to write her book. And each time we met, we'd be talking through things. She'd write a bit, but what we ended up healing was actually her relationship with her parents, and her relationship with her family and her friends. And that was absolutely amazing, because there was a lot there of really a lot of depression, a lot of anger, a lot of not getting on, not feeling sort of good enough or fitting in. And just through attempting to write the book, what came up each time we met was shifts in different aspects of her relationships with these people, to the point where she ended up having an amazing relationship with her parents. Friends either just no longer served, just drifted away, and she was just happy with that, or other friends just became even closer, you know? And it was just such an amazing experience to watch, and to watch her confidence grow, and for her to then write confidently what it was that she had to say, because she'd held on to it for so long, you know? And she was able to then express it, write it, and share. And she was amazed at the support that she got by sharing it. But as you say, we can either write a letter, write it out and destroy it, because that gets it out of our system. But also, there are times when you can share it. And that again is really powerful, because that in sharing it, there's something else that shifts in your relationships with others. So, yeah, this amazing, amazing opportunity that we have. And yet, so many people say they want to write a book, but they don't, or they start and they stop. And I know that I'm still in that start stop. And there's something in me driving me, and at times I'm going, what is it? You know, and so I just do a bit more work, and I think one day I have this vision of me just sitting and just writing, you know, because my eldest daughter, um, she was great at writing, and I used to just watch her, and literally it was like the pen would glide over the paper. I would be in awe of how quickly she would write, and because that was never there for me. Um, it is becoming a bit more so now. But yes, so where else could we go with this? What else do you see as being healing along this journey of writing?
Well, I think that sometimes people need to write their story not even for an audience but for themselves. And I think that's something that is really important, but I also think too that finding that commitment to write is important. I know for me, I have a couple of books in my head that I want to write for adults, but I haven't sat down and actually like focused on it yet. I've written out like each chapter that I want to read and I wanted to or that I want to write, and I've but there's that fear behind it as well, as writing for adults is a lot different than writing for children. And so one of the steps in helping me get to that next phase where I'm going to write a book for adults, um, was to start writing articles for a magazine, and so that I had an adult audience, so that that could give me a little bit more confidence in that area as
Mm,
well, so that but at the same time too, it's like all your steps along your journey, right? I had to write so many papers for the degrees that I got in university, and each time I got a little bit better at writing and a little bit better at writing. And I know people who've written these amazing books, but they don't take the last steps, the final last steps to get it out to the world. And I'm just like,
mhm.
why?
I know
Why
why.
are you doing that? And so I think that if you do have a book in your heart that you know needs to be written, that you A need to start, but then B need to hold yourself accountable, or get a writing group that's going to hold you accountable to sit down and write. And that's actually one of my goals this summer, is to sit down and write for an hour every day, and then also get my next book illustrated. But So because I'm a teacher and that I'll have time in the summer, that's my goal is to have, when we're here and my daughter and I aren't on holidays doing something, that I'm going to write at least for an hour a day and start to get my book written. And because I know that it's meant to be written, and I know that all of the books that I've written for children, like I have 8 of them, and they all were meant to if they help one person, then I did my job. And that's the important journey. And it's interesting because this year in my school, we were learning about empathy, and I just published a book called I Am Empathetic about 2 years ago. And the whole school, I read my book and I just published it on YouTube for the school. And I had little kids in like grade 1, because I teach grade 5, come up to
Yeah.
me like, "Oh, we read your book. You're the one that wrote the book." And I'd be like, "Yeah, did you learn something from it?" And they were all like, "Oh, I loved your book. It's so great." And so like helping teach empathy was something that is a huge passion of mine. I think that we can be kind, but even when we're kind, we're not being empathetic. And teaching empathy, especially right now with the COVID issues and with so many racism issues in our world, there's a huge need for empathy and trying to understand other people's perspectives. And so for me, like writing my book is to help people heal and to help people understand that the book that I'm writing right now, I'm illustrating right now, is called A Better Tomorrow. And I started writing it because of the Black Lives Matter stuff that was happening in the States, but then also some of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis stuff that's happening in Canada. And it's not necessarily specifically about that. It's just about looking at our world and how can we take steps each day to make a better tomorrow. And so it's not about, my book isn't about race or about anything like that, but it is about asking kids, how can I make a better tomorrow? Like when I turn on the news, I hear all of these horrible things. When I learn about the past, I learn about all of these awful things that happened in my country or in the world, or to people of different races throughout history. And I think, how did these things happen? And now I think, okay, those were lessons for us to learn. What can I do now to make a better tomorrow? And so that's kind of the premise of the book, but it's my first book where it's rhyming. And so I'm excited for that to finally be done.
Yeah, it sounds exciting. You say
But
when it's rhyming,
mhm,
so you're bringing rhyme into.
yeah, yeah. So it's
Yes,
my first
yeah,
one that'll be a rhyming one.
yeah, yeah. Uh,
But yeah, it's a journey for sure to learn how to write and to get your ideas out there. And my first version of the book wasn't rhyming, and then I was like, I like rhyming books when I'm reading to the class. And
yeah,
so I wanted something that like sparked their interest a little bit more through words and through rhyming, and it definitely made the book harder to write, but I think it'll be that much more impactful to listen to and to read when it does get finished.
yeah. Definitely, definitely. And that is intriguing that you've got a couple that you want to write for adults,
Mhm.
and you've written all of these for children. And there is, and I know they say writing children's books is different to writing um, adult books, and so you're going to make that shift
Yes.
the other way. So again,
Mhm.
so there's probably other healing to come out there, because it's like, well, what is it that sort of holds you back with the writing of the adult's book in a way that maybe you didn't get held back with writing your children's books,
Mhm.
which is intriguing. And what I've found is there's something here that wants to be said, that, and it's about expression. And I must say that actually doing this writing journey and unlocking the writer within has helped me with speaking and being able to just be on a talk show like this, or be interviewed on podcasts, and or just um, do talks, and put my what I want to say together, and allow my brain to be okay with just pausing for a bit to find the words. And the words do come much more quickly than they used to. But yeah, in the past, when I first started many years ago, sort of wanting to stand up and do talks or be on stage or something, I was like, an absolute, my mouth wouldn't work, my brain wouldn't work. So again, that has been a part of for me, the healing journey of writing, of unlocking this writer within. It's helped my speaking journey as well. And but something I was reading the other day about writing, and it actually, I read that it says it strengthens your immune system by writing, because it takes, the stress, and as you were saying, you journaled when you were in that dark place, and it helped. So it helps to lift your mood, and whether it's gratitude you're writing, or just journaling out, or writing, what's going on for you. But actually, the physical act of writing um, actually strengthens your immune system. And as we're talking here, I'm thinking, maybe that's something that would support people through this period that we're going now, and that we've been through, because there's been so much has happened for people, and maybe just there's a whole lot of writing to be done, people to share their story through this experience, not just to share it so others can learn from it or get some inspiration, but maybe just to lift this lethargy that's here. I don't know about other people and about you, but I feel that there's a real tiredness, a real exhaustion. There's an effort to getting anything done, brain power wise and just physically. And I actually went out on Saturday for the first time in what must be 15 months, 16 months, and met up with two friends who we're accountability buddies. So we've been Zooming each other each week. And we decided to meet up on Saturday in the centre of London. And we did a goal setting day. And I I was exhausted come Sunday, because I think I was so overstimulated. But my whole being was singing. I felt alive through that whole day, because it was like we were moving, we were talking. And we all said how much more exciting it was than sitting like this, talking through the screen, So there was something about bringing us alive. And I'm just wondering whether through writing, people could bring something alive, could boost their immune system and move us through this time in a different way, in a way that maybe hasn't been thought of. I don't know what you think about that aspect of it.
Well, I think for me too, I found that I've been very lethargic and just exhausted. And I think that, like I was saying to my assistant principal, I was like, I haven't been drawing the way that I normally do, because I'm so tired of sitting in front of a screen. And then I come home and I try to draw on my iPad, and I'm just like, I just can't do this. And so there's been a real tiredness, a real just like I'm exhausted and I don't want to do anything throughout this entire time. And I've been trying to be really gentle with myself, because usually I'm a like goal setter. I want to get at least one thing done each week, and I plan um, to each day, like each week, try to get take steps towards my goals. And I've been finding that I have been really struggling with that, just being lethargic in wanting to get things done. And I think part of that is too, one of the things that I really love to do when my daughter was at her dad's is go to a coffee shop and sit and write, or go to a coffee shop and sit and draw, and we haven't been able to do that. And I've been missing that, so I've just been at home and I've been like, oh, I just want to. You feel so much more alive when you're out in the world and doing something. And so I feel like that part has really been missing for me, for sure. Like I would go, and two, I find that getting out of my house helps me focus on my writing, whereas other people might find that they do better when they are at home. But for me, if I'm home, I'll be like, oh, I'll clean this, or I'll do the laundry, or this needs to be done, or that needs to be done, and I don't have that focus time. Whereas when I go to a coffee shop, I have that time to just focus, and my whole focus is on my writing or on my drawing. And so not having the ability to go to a coffee shop and write has really affected my motivation to write and my motivation to focus on my goals. And because I would spend time every couple of weeks just in a coffee shop for a few hours working on my goal pieces and my writing, and that's something that I found through this period to be really difficult for me, because even though I'm sitting at the coffee shop by myself, I still feel like it's like gives me better energy and more focus to be there and do that. And so I think that for people in general, that this time has been really difficult for motivation, because the motivation, especially the energy that you get from others, is lacking, and doing it over the computer all the time isn't necessarily it's not the same. And when you get in a group of writers, or you get in a group of people who are working towards your goals, you like feel their inspiration. And that's something that I just love that you said. Then it's something that I've been wanting to start, was like a goal setting group. And I haven't got there because of COVID, but it is definitely something on my list of things to do, is for empowering women, is to get on a group that meets once a week and sets goals and helps people achieve those goals. And so I think that's something really important. I also was thinking back to your comment on J.K. Rowling and how the first book, and then you struggled with reading the last book, and as you were talking, I was like, well, she wrote them that you'd start at a certain age, and then the books would grow with you. And I think that if you are a writer, you really have to consider that. If you want your audience to grow with you, or if you want your audience to stay in that certain age group. Because I know there's a lot of different books out there that, like my daughter loved in grade 2. And then in grade 3, it's a different series that she just loves. And then in grade 4, it's been a different series. And I see that in my students as well. And so I think as a writer, you have to think to yourself, is my focus group going to always be this age? Or is it going to be something that I want the kids to start with and then grow? And I think one of the reasons that J.K. Rowling was so successful is that she had almost planned it so that the books would grow along with the children, and even as adults that read it, you start off with this like easier reading novel that's small, and then by the end the book's like this, and kids are so proud of themselves by the end that they finish that giant book as well. And that's, I think, a big growth journey too. And so, but I know that there's lots of really successful children's authors and children's books too, where they just focus on that one age group. So I think if you are a writer, that's just something that you should consider, is who your audience is, and if you're going to want to grow with your audience, or if you want to just focus on that one age group and stick with it. And two, sometimes people have different pen names for the different age groups as well. And so like if they're writing like a grade 2 area book, their pen name is this, and then if they're writing a middle school book, their pen name is something else. And I think that can be something in your marketing focus. My healing journey now is on how to market better because writing your book sometimes is the easiest part. If you want to get it out into the world, the marketing part is definitely the part that can be the biggest struggle for people, because once you get your book written, it's, well, how are you going to get it out to people? and that's a new journey in and of itself. But it also can be a healing journey in gaining confidence to speak out. You talked about how your journey has allowed you to help you feel confident enough to speak on shows like this or on podcasts, and that it's been the same for me. In school, I was the child that the teachers would be like, she never talks in class and she's so quiet, and she needs to speak up because we can't hear her. And so it's been a confidence journey as well for me, which you said it was for yourself as well. I would have never been able to speak in front of people except for this path that I've been on, and part of my path was through university as well, learning how to speak in front of people for presentations and stuff, and that has allowed me to have confidence to speak on things like this, whereas I would have never had that confidence if I had not gone through university, and more specifically even my master's degree, where I remember this one time I was 9 months pregnant and we had this project too, and it was a presentation, and I was like, okay, here's all my stuff. If I can't make it because I'm giving birth, this is like my part of the project and blah blah blah. But like by the time the presentation came along, it was like my due date, but my daughter was late.
Oh, bless her.
and the one person in our group didn't do any work, and I was so frustrated, and I was like, you know what, nobody's going to tell the 9-month pregnant lady to sit down. So I just stood up and started talking and told him to sit down, and was like, this person in our group is going to explain the rest of it, because the other person hadn't prepared anything. And at the end, my group was like, thank you so much for standing up and telling him to sit down because he didn't do any work. And I was like, all I was thinking in my head was, I worked so hard for this, and I'm going to get my A, and that guy is not going to screw it up. And I'm 9 months pregnant, and nobody's telling the pregnant lady to sit down.
Oh, absolutely. Amazing.
So I
Yes.
looked at that, and that was like a learning experience too, in that confidence to stand up when you're like, I worked so hard for this, and this person is like did not, and especially in a group project, did not do any work for it. And so that confidence, because before I would have never spoke up. I would have just sat there silent and like in my head just dying because I had worked so hard, and this person is messing it up for me. But it was a lesson, right, in being able to stand up, and then two, I was worried that my group would have been like, what are you doing? Why did you do that? But they were, at the end, they were like, thank you. We were all thinking the same thing, but nobody was brave enough to stand up and say it.
That's right.
So, yeah, because all the other people in the group had worked so hard for that. So learning how to speak is a big journey as well. And if you start writing, speaking almost comes hand in hand with it, because in order to market and get what you're writing out there, you have to start speaking. And you have to start going to different events where you have to talk and not just hide behind your computer. Or in this way, we're hiding behind our computers too, but putting what we're hiding behind our computers in out to the world. And I think that's something that's really powerful about technology as well, is that we have the power to share our message with the entire world, and everyone who has access to the internet does have that power as well. And instead of being, one thing I've written about as well is being an active producer of content rather than a passive consumer of content. And when you become an active producer of content, then you're actually sharing your voice with the world. And so many of us are just passive consumers of what we're learning on the internet and technology and social media. And when you can flip that into being an active producer of content, then you really are channeling your own creative voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well done for standing up, because actually, at the end of the day, if you hadn't stood up, then it's only yourself that you've got to blame for not really getting through. It's not that person's fault. Okay, they didn't do any work, but if you don't stand up and claim that space, then you're just as as bad as they are in a sense, but also you're the one that would be hurting inside because you'd be, you'd regret it. So it's like, well done for going, nope, I'm going to do this. I'm going to see it through, and and stand up and share, and talk when you needed to. And as the rest of the group said, they thanked you for it. But something else you were saying about, that J.K. Rowling taking the age group up, because this is what sort of set me on the quest of researching the two, because it's like adults can read the Harry Potter series and get something from it, but adults read Enid Blyton books and it's like they don't. And I've realized, that, and I always said, well, Enid Blyton wrote for children, not for adults. And when you become an adult, you don't read it in the same way. And I really get frustrated when people malign, her writing. Okay, so maybe she didn't have a huge vocabulary, maybe she didn't use a lot of adjectives, but she had a way of drawing you into the most amazing, magical mystery world, And so for that, and if that was what her quest was, and she got that right, and she didn't want to move on, whereas J.K. Rowling, she planned it so it would move on and grow up with her books. So, and this is something that I now sort of focus on. I do a 5-day free sort of writing challenge. I call it a retreat, but I'm going back to calling it a challenge. And I focus on, actually, because I've realized there's a foundational framework that you need for any piece of writing that you do. And that is, what is the aim of the piece that you're writing? Whether it's a book, an article, a post, what's the aim of it? And then who is the target audience? So again, that is really important, because who is it you're writing this piece for, or this book? What is their age? And therefore, what is their background? And the third one is, what's the purpose? And I've realized there's two purposes. There's what are you as a writer going to get out of it, which is very often ignored. And there's what is it that the reader is going to get out of it, from reading this piece that you're writing. And then I look at the fears and the limiting beliefs that hold you back, because there's always that. So we look at that and transform that. And then there's creating a writing practice. So as you were saying, you're talking about, you're going to set aside an hour a day in the summer holidays to write this book. And I've been on a writing challenge with Hay House Publishing quite a few months ago. And Reed Tracy, he says, you just need to write, but you need to write every day, even if it's only 7 minutes. A writer writes. So you need a daily writing practice. But actually, writers don't just write, they read as well. So that needs to be part of your writing practice, because you do research. It's not a case of it all just coming out of here. You do research. You need to look things up. So there's your reading, and you can be making notes. There's your writing. It's not just sitting writing the book itself or the article itself. There's so many other bits to it, but a daily practice. And someone else, another writing challenge I went on just recently, that person said about, make it, even if it's only 17 minutes a day, it's this just consistently, daily, actually having a writing practice. So I sort of work through that as well, to have you clear what's in the way of having a writing practice and bring it as a daily activity. But and that's been exciting to put together and run. I've run that a couple of times now, and what's sort of shown up in there has been really interesting, and how it's helped people to sort of move on and reconnect with what they're writing, or get a deeper understanding. I've had somebody who's done it gone through it twice now, and she just got a deeper understanding of what she's writing, the aim of it, the target audience, you know. So yeah, I'm working through it myself for this one book that I'm now aiming to get completed. I thought, no, I must let me see myself through the whole process now, and I've got a small book to get written at the moment. So yeah, I think I need to share. Maybe I need to share that journey. I think that might be a good idea. And but yeah. So is there?
I love Hay House. I was like, oh, I love all the stuff that they do and all of the stuff that they put out. And I've read about Louise Hay and how she started the publishing company when she was 60 years old. She is like one of my heroes.
Yeah.
I just love all of her work.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she's passed on now, but she definitely has started an empire of a healing journey through writing for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking about as you were talking is that writing piece daily, but also to the reading piece. And when I was in university, one of the things that I loved to do was the research, but I didn't love the writing part. I could like research and research and
Yes.
research, and
Yeah.
I found that so fun. And I'm like, then I get to the writing part, and I'd be like, oh, this is the worst. And I think I'm still a little like that. Like I'm always reading like 6 books at a time,
Yeah.
and then I get to the writing, and I'm like, oh, but it's not necessarily like I'm reading for research all the time. I'm just reading for enjoyment most of the time.
Yeah.
But I read to learn all of the time, and I find it interesting that I still struggle with that piece of like flipping it to like, okay, now I have all of this
Yeah.
information, just sit down and write. I
Put it
struggled
all
with that all
together.
through university. Like,
Oh
oh, I have
gosh.
like 30 pages worth of research notes for a 3-page paper. Okay,
Mm.
paper's still not done yet.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But what you were saying about reading, it doesn't have to be just for research, because it's actually, if you're reading, you're getting to a feel for how other people write and put words together or express themselves, you know, and it is for the enjoyment. But yeah, there's reading is important. But what I've also realized is actually learning to write, going back to the basics of handwriting and actually writing by hand, actually helps your reading to actually you to understand more of what you're reading.
Yeah.
So that's something else I'm sort of bringing out in what I'm explaining as well, because it's things that something else I've discovered, and which I think will help people with their maths ultimately, because it is the reading with understanding that usually falls. That's where people fall down with their maths. But I'm just to sort of round this up. Is there anything, one last thing, one last piece of advice you'd like to share with our
Um,
listeners?
Yeah, I think sometimes you just need to get a pencil and paper and just start writing. Even if you have no ideas, just start writing the first thing that comes to the top of your head. And even if it's just about gratitude, just start writing about gratitude. And even the other night I just started writing about gratitude for the friends that I have and how lucky I am to have them in my life. And sometimes just getting pen to paper can be such a healing thing for anyone, especially if you are struggling with something in your life. Just journaling it can be so healing. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be for an audience. And if it is meant for an audience, you'll meet the right people to help you get it out there.
And for me, if you're someone who picks up a pen and mind's gone blank, just write those words. Oh, my mind's gone blank. Oh, how frustrating this is. And that's what I've learned to do. Just describe how it is in the moment. What is it like to hold this pen and and not be able to write what it is you want, and just scribble, or what, that frustration, let it out. Even if you just scribble, and scribble with your other hand as well. and then
Well,
just
it's
say what.
interesting because when I teach and sometimes I give them free write time, and I've had students be like, I have no ideas. I'm like, then write that. I have no ideas. Writing sucks. It's the worst
Yeah.
thing ever. And like I make it into like this silly little joke, and then they start writing it and they start giggling, and then
Yes.
they think it's just the funniest thing ever. But it gets them out of that funk of just staring at a blank
Yes.
page. And so like I tell them, first line, I have no ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Writing time is my least favorite time of the day. Why is Miss Cottrell making us do this? And then, but they're writing and they're laughing and they're writing about how much they hate
Yes.
writing. But
And
then
that's
they're
the
looking.
important thing, is to
Mhm,
acknowledge what is there for you in the moment about
mhm.
writing,
Yeah,
because there's nothing wrong with that. That is the most important thing, acknowledging what's there for you, and
yeah,
then just freeing up and having fun. Because what I'm hearing is they end up laughing. There's,
yeah.
laughter and a freedom that comes through, and that's the healing.
I only
That's the
wish I could
healing.
write those things when I'm writing report cards. I hate writing report cards. This is the worst.
Yes.
Just kidding.
Oh gosh, yes, I remember those days. Oh, so, but anyway, thank you for listening. This is Nkosi Talk Shows, and if there's anything that you'd like to follow up with this particular topic, anything you want to know, then do get in touch. We're here Monday to Friday, 1 p.m. till 2 p.m. UK time, and all our speakers are here. Do message us if you've got queries or want support, and we look forward to seeing you or hearing from you. And yes, have a great day, night, or wherever you are. Bye for now. Thank you.